first up, we have the amazing and talented Kate Pyontek. They are a poet and writer whose work has been published in Poetry, Ecotone, Shō Poetry Journal, Southeast Review, Consequence, and elsewhere. Hell yeah. Kate has been honored to receive fellowships from the Volland Foundation, the Ellis-Beauregard Foundation, and Bush Creek Foundation for the Arts. Great. Kate currently lives and works in Cambridge, Massachusetts. To learn more, Kate has a website, katepiontech.com. All right, Kate, you can take it away whenever you're ready.
Thank you. And thanks to Poets in Pajamas for having me, and Tandiwe and Evelyn for organizing this and for all your support leading up to tonight. And of course, I'm honored to be reading with Amie. I'm really excited to hear your work. So I'm currently working on a manuscript that I hope will be my first full-length collection that deals with like what it means to love and like the emotions and actions of love, and what it means to be like alive as a creature who feels like witnesses all the horrors of the world right now and feels all the grief as well as its pleasures. So I'm going to be reading from this manuscript. I'm going to be reading for about 17 minutes, I think. Okay. This first poem was published in Four-Way Review, maybe in 2020, and it's called Crush. What if I drew your face on the mirror with sea salt, using a moistened boar bristle paintbrush, and, after singing Caroline Polachek, licked it off? Would that be enough? I mean, for me. If I rode the tangerine lotus elise of an idea across the Rockies, carried this pining obsession into swaying spheres overlooking the Strait of Georgia, would that be enough? I can never sleep. No surprise. Neither can I eat enough sap to become resin against this. I'm wrestling in tree houses with an illusion, and I'd fuck with the worst one for sure. Can't I like snow and still shovel it away? Is it wrong to eat strange plants if they're not that poisonous? Isn't that better than sitting here, starving to death? I'm compelled like feathers to static. I'm tapping metal like a prayer. I'm sure I've never seen a wild potato. I don't know how to convince my mouth to stop craving what it craves. And don't think this is about sex. I want to taste the nectar of this impossibility in the most breathless way. And the possibility breathes not like a right lung, but like a left, one lobe absent to fit the shape of a beating heart. Exposure triangle. To flirt is to court humiliation, to pose coquettish and ridiculous behind the velvet curtain. At the call, desire revealed oozing, intruding like mud in the basement after the rains. Horrible, yes, but proof at least that we are on and of earth, flesh and wet. The deluge unbuilds the roads, every liquid a force, erotic. And the closures and reroutes, like any path to ecstasy, fucking convoluted. The memory of your hands fluttering shy at my sleeve on the corner, how I desired to undress you into cool water. You say, I didn't know who else to call. You say, I love when you psychoanalyze me. I ask you to recite your body as saintly pixels, and you, exhibitionist, offer the colors up, skin limned bright by want. This is how we find ourselves at the early hours of a new day, deep in the mud of vulnerability that marks every new intimacy. I listen to you breathing across the night, knowing you want me to pull you toward rapture until you beg, until I pull you past begging, until our natures exposed, deconstruct and rebuild us. And I can promise you nothing, but we both know I will. This is Nocturne with Construction Detour. This was published pretty recently in, I'm forgetting now, I think it was in Shō Poetry Journal. Nocturne with Construction Detour. Rain easing. Now we can hear each other and the music. Who knows what's playing? I still feel often like I love you, but I can't be sure anymore. The same way, walking a wide field long enough, I forget the stars above me move. They dissolve to permanent fixtures of bright. I'm obsessed with your self-destruction and delusion, the way you cry in my passenger seat. I want to ask if you believe what you're saying. You don't. I'm starved for someplace warm to lay the blood and pulp and marrow of my loneliness. And why not your lap? But I know why. And the conflict of how sharply I do and do not want to touch you is restrained by a need to focus on gold and garnet lights, the weaving semis, orange cones, and Broad Street closed signs. I touch your shoulder, small solace, then I take the exit. I love the cats on the screen, by the way. This next poem is called Caramancy. It has been in some of the posts that have been up on the Poets and Pajamas website or Instagram posts. So Caramancy, this was written when I was at an artist residency. I was there with a visual artist who made candles as part of his art. And we had a blackout at the where we were staying, where we were living. And he started burning his candles, and I was like, "That's your art." That seemed so crazy to me, but he's like, "They're candles." So all of us like sat around and talked about art while we burned candles during the blackout. It was great, and it inspired this poem. Caramancy. In the kitchen, we pulled tarot cards. I wanted tide charts. Loneliness seeks omen in loneliness. Rain fell on the sea, and I forgot to read the coffee dregs. Now, we will never know. What's left? Beeswax, lavender, engine heat of an old Ford pickup, melting brittle yellow to shape and be shaped by believing mere heat and plasticity make a marking bell. In the mangled tin can, flecks of lavender burn, fragrant and bombastic. Steam escapes every undeclared future, a bell inaudible in the static. Lightning, fire, tiny screaming bat, salvaged by a sweatshirt. Is it the heat or the hand that forms the wax? Motor oil or barnacle scraped from a hull that forces fluidity. A wish in a wick. Stepping brazen into the sea smoke, listening to the clarifying bell. A stag call from the balcony. In candlelight, antlers make patterns as best as I can shape them. "3 years in New England. I never saw a moose the whole time, at least not alive. Proof, I thought, that I was living wrong. I tried another way. Still, no moose. And then, no music. No nothing except the paycheck and the rent, which I couldn't afford. I couldn't imagine staying there anymore, so I refused to sign a lease. But I didn't leave either. Couldn't. Instead, I jumped house to house, taking care of rich people's cats in exchange for a place to stay. In July, I care for a cat who screams all night, every night, paces across the bed and knocks lamps off tables to punctuate the screaming. I'm in agreement with the sentiment, but lost on the specifics. The cat never clarifies. During the day, the cat snores on my laundry as I pace the house sleep-deprived, saying, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" There's no answer. There are no moose left. Barely a moon. It feels like something's dead about my star. One night, the cat paces across the covers and I lift them. He burrows under, wiggles down the sheets, and curls up against me. He sleeps soundly and silently through the nights this way. I'm almost annoyed at how easy it was. That's all it took. Just someone to love him and a safe place to sleep. The next day, I'm pacing, 100 tabs open to LinkedIn and Craigslist, considering other ways to live. Leave the city, stay in the city, make more money, spend more money, fuck more, swim more, yearn at the moon more, rob a bank, emigrate, beg the universe for a fucking break. Nothing clarifies. Meanwhile, the cat is sleeping in the laundry. This next poem I wrote about a mango, which is not actually mentioned in the poem, but it's actually about a mango. Droop and bloom. Awareness isn't living. Boredom isn't. A pit outgrowing the flesh it's embedded in is. Always plums and apricots in the kitchen. Wet peels and puddles of juice. Pulp on a knife. It's impossible to get rid of the stone fruit weighing down the neutral psyche. There is no neutral psyche. Only tiny hairs on the skin of a peach. Eat. Eat, eat, whatever you like. Eat some of what you don't like. Gather both sweetness and dirt onto your tongue. Try them 7 times. Taste the living and the dead. Fruit is just a remnant of what flowers. What remains of fruit ferments. Acquire a palate for the fizzy, for death and the dying and the lingering. Bottle it up, then wait, wait. Wait until you dream of waiting and time softens into boiling, until the pressure builds, the glass cracks, the gasping escapes, explodes. My stars, what we do. This next poem I wrote, I was thinking about, I was living in Quebec, north of the St. Lawrence River on the Saguenay fjord, which is the only fjord on the east coast of North America. And I was feeling a little overwhelmed with how much terrible news I was reading and how much needed to get changed, fixed. And I was thinking about how we can only focus on what the next achievable goal is and the next step we can take is. I was wrestling with that when I was writing this. On the Saguenay River. Halfway through the morning's coffee, and no closer to solving the world's problems. The sky ambers azure into Alice against the deep pine vertical of mountain across the river. There is so little I can hope for in the unnumbered days that remain. Still, I hope assiduously, like a pilgrim miles on the way. The ships bob in the river with the placid gulls. How steady it must be to float serene here, green on all sides, hunted neither by the past nor what follows. If I look long enough into the current, I almost forget how afraid I am, how dire the days pull. Sometimes I do forget, and for a moment nothing needs to be done. That is the trap. That is the release. The ease of oblivion, a Chicxulub cratering of the self. What am I without my grief, my agitation and want for change? What am I with it, inconsequential as I am? The birds take flight and are replaced by birds. The coffee runs out. Ships move on and become new ships. Up the long winding hill, in the park, with the electrical tower and its wires, there is a wooden platform overlooking the wide blue river, and far below, a vertiginous distance, boats look like toys to their tasks, running to and fro, and maybe I should be living other lives, more enlightened, more cohesive. But I don't actually give a damn about shrines. I'm just walking, and each step means nothing, and each step is everything I have. This next poem I wrote quite a while ago, and it's about the UN designated genocide as a crime in the 1940s. I want to say 1948, but it might have been 1947. And they defined genocide as any act, any of a list of actions with intent to destroy a group. And item E in the list is forcibly transferring students of the group to another group, which, among other things, destroys cultural memory. And I wrote this in, I think, 2019, and I was thinking about children being removed from their parents at the southern border when I wrote it, but it still feels very relevant. Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, Article 2, Item E. In June, the apricot tree sagged with squat fruit that fell splat on the sidewalk. Children jumped for the velvet orbs. By mid-July, all had disappeared. All except juice stains on concrete, as if no velvet, no fruits, no children jumping. Flowery sweetness in the air gone. The tree had always been empty. The ground had always been stained. In January, a child asked, "What tree is this?" And nobody could remember. Thoughts while making a salad. The sky is hazy with looming storm. Elsewhere, far away, but also nearby, the world burns, drowns, suffocates. Despite, wildflowers are sprung forth, so thick that the dirt drive smells like honey. My neighbor disagrees with me on everything. He says, "Why would they want to make us afraid?" He brings me vegetables daily: rutabagas, radishes, cucumbers, peas. We do not exactly argue, but I say, "That's not true," a lot. He rejects anything that scares him, permits only apparitions he believes in. I can almost understand. I can't look some ghosts in the eye. My neighbor has a fear that needs certainty, authority. My fear needs to believe people are trying to be good. Maybe this is why I tell myself my neighbor is trying his best. Why, in meadows, I imagine I can smell bees at work, as if there's still hope we can, collectively, make a difference. Be honest, the bees are dying. We are killing them. There is only the smell of dirt. The bee's best is not good enough anymore. Trying is not enough anymore. People are dying. We are killing them. What the hell am I doing? I'm going to read 3 more poems. Ecological Study, New Moon. The moon is wet. A moon's moon is called a moon moon. The moon is rolling down the street, chased by its handlers. Every year, the moon spirals away from the moonstruck by a span of 2 fingers. The moon is wobbling, spilling cups, throwing oceans. The prophets share lunar facts as sacred, as if gathering enough might illuminate how to hold on, sustain us through those dark phases where the light cannot be seen. This poem comes from the title of a news article that was in NPR in 2018, where they were reporting that what they thought had been the world's rarest fish was actually not. They had miscounted. And I just thought the title was great. One of the world's rarest fish is a little less rare than we thought. Not every fish is countable. The unquantifiable shimmers and shakes. Our mobile incompetence woos us, taunts. How could we not see by now? We keep searching for a word to describe miscounted fish, like failure or fix. Fate seeking synonym for an ocean, but finding only the same patterns we hope will be kind this time. We mistake a lack of evidence as evidence to the contrary. Nothing is so convincing as an answer. We forgive indiscretion, claiming errant data. We repeat, recount. This happens with fish. Salt water dries crystalline and mysterious. We begin innocent again, looking at idle flicks of algae as if expecting truth to appear, dependable like a number. And there, the fish we missed. How ordinary, how rare, those silly yellow hands. Thank you. This is the last poem I'm going to read. This is about the extinction of the dinosaurs. Instructions following the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. 1. Hold your breath. Most bony fish survive, so learn to extract oxygen through the thin filaments along your pharynx. 2. Pack what still matters into boxes. None of it matters. No, all of it matters. But you don't know that yet. 3. When you discover your childhood piggy bank, flimsy tin and cracked open, spilling a rainbow of buttons, crumple. Understand that this, too, was a lie. 4. Set the boxes in a window. Arrange books on the shelves. Discard the miseries you no longer need. Place the rest in a cabinet like heirlooms. Learn, slowly, that holding on to something a long time doesn't make it precious. 5. Let yourself mourn. No tetrapod bigger than a wombat will survive the impact winter. 6. Adapt. Wear buttons like flowers, wear flowers like teeth. Drink sangrias below a mural of the meteor. Pay attention when a woman tells you, your face is so fucking alert. 7. Grow a space for breath in the cavern of your new body. Now, breathe. Thank you.
That was incredible, Kate. I absolutely loved that. I mean, I'm gonna have all the questions at the end, so don't wait up for me. But thank you so much for reading. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. It means so much. We will hold our questions until after our next amazing poet, Amie Whittemore. Is the author of 3 poetry collections, most recently Nest of Matches, which is with Autumn House Press. Amie, if you'd like to drop the link down, I know I'll be getting myself a copy. So we would drop down in the chat. But Amie was the 2020-2021 Poet Laureate of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellow. Her poems have won multiple awards, including Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Prize, and her poems and prose have appeared in the Gettysburg Review, Nashville Review, Smartish Review, and the Pleiades, and elsewhere. Amie currently teaches creative writing at Eastern Illinois University. And Amie, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone here. It's been so lovely to hear you read, Kate, and I'm really excited to hear more about your work in the Q&A. I realized hearing my bio that it's slightly out of date because I did have a chapbook released this year. So I will be reading from that to begin with. And since it is an eclipse today, and I feel bad that I don't have a solar eclipse poem, but I do have a lunar eclipse poem. So I thought I would begin with that. And the chapbook is called Hesitation Waltz. There it is. This is Lunar Pastoral. Though I marked my calendar, I'll forget to watch Earth paint the moon gray, then black, then white again. White as toothache, dry elbow skin, a crown of bones, as I imagine a narwhal's tusk, though I have never seen one. Tonight I'd dip that tusk in my wine glass to prevent all future hangovers, all future gloomy moods where I pretend I'll look up the etymology of melancholia, but don't. Where I pretend I need a spouse to soothe me, but I don't. Like, I won't say earth or moon, but like a shovel, I'm purposeful but often idle. Collecting cobwebs is a passing though fulfilling hobby. Someday I hope to be less shovel, more soil, prepped for roots, for thriving. Love, I want to say, to whom I'm not sure. I've come to a different power tonight. This is the self stripped of alimonies, stripped of pearls, unforgivable, unrelenting, cherished by no one. Not you, wife, nor you, husband. Not even you, dear moon, whom I want to see cloaked but won't. Clouds tonight, bats beating them. At least, I think so. Maybe smaller darknesses are just that, smaller and thus personable. It wouldn't be a poetry reading without Minnow dancing her tail across the screen to steal the show. But she's made her move, and now she's like, I'll go take a nap again. Maybe. We'll see. Thank you, y'all. Next poem is inspired by a student evaluation I received for a science fiction class that I taught in 2018. And this is Ode to My Superpower. Student, it's true. I prefer women to lentils, to CrossFit classes, to retirement plan selection, leaf blowers, plastic bags, and roller coasters. It's also true I'll take a female protagonist over a ham sandwich, and that women befriending robot spiders, sexing up aliens, and becoming bold mermaids crowd my syllabus. If curating a collection of uncomfortable texts is a superpower, I'll claim it. Student, do you fear ground floor apartments and always deadbolt the door? Has a man passing you on the sidewalk asked if he could eat your pussy? I was uncomfortable then, and I hope you see how reading about women isn't quite the same thing. If you can't, I've failed the women I prefer, their voices curved by patriarchy to speak in quiescent registers when faced with male anger. Student, every prey animal knows to survive requires, sometimes, to diminish. So yes, when women spoke firmly in my class, I didn't tamp their voices. If it was uncomfortable to see women boisterous and emboldened by, yes, it's true, feminist texts, if it made you feel I too harshly graded your mediocre work, well, student, I am sorry. I failed you, whom I most wanted to transform, if not into a mermaid or a lover of aliens, at least into someone more capacious. Perhaps we're both a little wrong. The discomfort you feel, not a sign of our failures, but the pang that heralds a womb-like spaceship, an underwater matriarchy, a nebula unweaving the dark. And then I think I'll do one more from Hesitation Waltz and then dance, pun intended, over to one of the other books. And this is the title poem. Here we go. Hesitation Waltz. Maybe now that Sor Juana de la Cruz has a biopic on Netflix, it's easier to date a woman who likes dishing about nuns. 10 years ago, it was as unlikely as a nun at a drag show, so when Victoria responded to my nun-themed Craigslist W for W, I was quick, but not too quick, to suggest a coffee date. And because bonding with lesbians over nun fantasies has proven to be my superpower, there's a superpower theme here, she agreed to extend our date to a bowling alley where we met my colleagues to celebrate the semester's end. She and I pretending to be college friends and not mostly strangers. She spent the night, alas, as a nun might, in the guest bed. She drove home before breakfast. Not good signs, but then she suggested we bake devil's food cake, a recipe invented slightly before the Hesitation Waltz, circa 1905. She wanted it to turn out right, you know? That, you know, made a handbag of me, and I wanted to be heavy with whatever she needed carried. That wasn't how it went. Victoria, if you read this, I still listen to the knife and daydream about lesbian convents. Let's dance the Hesitation Waltz. Let its bastardized moves squeeze us close as a hobble skirt would. The fashion craze when this ridiculous waltz gained fame. Its variations so painful it fell from favor, as did those skirts, tight and tubular as sausage casing. I've wanted so many things since we parted ways, Victoria. Rarely you, a woman who loved Joey Lawrence and 90s TV, who wanted to move to Spain. I know little else. Your heart-shaped face and curls faded now. Time snubs us both, glides over our skin like a lusty nun's hot tongue over her friend's nipple, their habits peeling from them like loosed shadows. They make up the steps, they say nothing, their bodies vespers vibrating the dusk. Thank you all. All right, I'm going to move to Nest of Matches, which came out last year. And in it, there is a poem for every full moon of the year. That was one of the tasks I gave myself when I was Poet Laureate as my public-facing project, because who doesn't love a good poem about the moon? And this is about September's full moon, which is called the Hunter's Moon. Hunter's Moon. Walking below your near fullness, the fullness of life overtakes me. Streetlights wink off as if masking up. Starlings cascade. Even in a pandemic, there is so much beauty. What to make of these 40 years? Moon, wanted most to be brave and need nothing. I have wanted to be someone else. Like you, I try to hunt everything at once. Like you, part of me is always turned away. For once, I don't want to call love a feral cat. I want to forgive myself the way water forgives everything. I don't know what kind of animal you stalk, but maybe my hands can be as true as your stone. Maybe the work is always reflecting. Tell me, who needs me? How beautiful they are. This is also a book with a lot of dream poems. I'm a very vivid dreamer, and I struggled for a long time to figure out how to turn those into poems. And then I decided, well, just write them down. Don't try to make them something else, just let them be what they were. So this is The Dream Yard. I know I'm not there, but with enough conviction, I feel like I am. The fence torn down, pasture and yard reunited, swaths of milkweed, goldenrod, asters, feathery switchgrass flickering into being. The light honey thick, and my feet warming in the dewy grass. Home again. What's the word for this? The gift of erasing one of life's many distances. Thank you. I think I've got 3 more. I'm going to do 2 from Star Tent. So we're like working backwards through the Amie Ovoir. Feels wild to have this many books. It's such a, I'm very grateful. This is my like wild step out into speculative poetry. And it is a triptych in that there are 3 narrators. And I'm going to read 2 from the narrator in the second section, who is an indestructible observer trapped in a black hole trying to send transmissions out. And I'll just read them back to back. And I think the only other thing to know is that he refers to his lost beloved back on Earth as someone. So you'll hear someone occur in the poems as a character. The indestructible observer considers class conflict. From here, it all appears as silly as a dog's ear folded back, as lopsided as a child's hopscotch, stilted as a first date. How wealth concentrated in the hands of the few, as if they were a black hole. I did not live among them, nor among the vast itinerant wealthy. Let me start over. I did not live among them, nor among the vast itinerant wealthy society sloughed like old skin, like anchors. I felt helpless then, and now my helplessness is transformed into benign neglect. The rich and poor and in between, all dead now, or as good as. The roaches have risen and taken over, and if that's not balm, it's at least relief. Forgive me, someone, for my merciless state. Here, where states have flattened, gas, liquid, solid, worthless categories, I can only marvel. We spent so much time starving each other, as if death were negotiable, as if our tenderness was as limited as helium. To the masses, to the imagined interlocutors of these frail missives, you know nothing of mass. You know nothing of not dying, nothing of actual emptiness, even if your hunger is heavy and full. You know nothing of weatherless, thirstless, sexless harboring of thought upon thought upon thought upon nothing, nor anything of each other, the vastness within each of you, which even I can barely fathom, though it's all I consider here in the vastness without. And this is The Indestructible Observer Considers Infinity. I used to think thinking was the most excellent pastime to pass time, but time no longer passes over me like a silky scarf, nor an orb weaver's threads. Time doesn't cess in pools or flow like blood, milk, urine, rivers, or essays. It slips each metaphor like a loose collar, like a minnow from cupped palms, like a film star avoiding a neurotic fan. Though metaphor itself is inescapable here, which took a long time to figure out, but in the figuring I found a grace like snowflakes as they vanish, grace like a woman's foot released from a glittering shoe. If I must go on forever, if I had known I'd have to go on forever, I'd have told someone about her metaphoric qualities, the fox behind her eyes, the otter in her laughter. Here, all animals are make-believe, and I must make in them, filling the vastness with their cries. Though sound also requires time to inhabit itself, so it too has become a betrayal, which is also a metaphor. Thank you. Thanks for going to outer space with me, y'all. Yes, and I see Evie put in the chat that you can get Star Tent directly from me. Unfortunately, that press went on indefinite hiatus after SVD shut down. So it is the only place you can get Star Tent on this planet. Other planets, I'm not so sure. And I will finish with a poem from my first book, Glass Harvest, which 9 years later is in its second printing, which feels very exciting to know that there's still enough interest in this little book that made it all start to happen. And I'm going to read the last poem from the book, and it's called Pearly Everlasting. Someone gave some time of pearly everlasting to those white buttons joined to stems with yellow thread, prairie flirts I dry from hooks above the sink. Coffee in chipped mugs, pancakes stuffed with blueberries plucked from bushes we planted years ago. Later, you'll mow the lawn and I'll weed the garden. Time for poems and reading in the sun, endless here, and all our family and friends live within a mile. We walk after dinner, then back home under starlight, listening for coyotes. In winter, fires. In spring, new chickens. Once you bound yourself in dozens of ribbons for me to open you one by one. Once you licked warm honey from our hives off my stomach. It's moonlight and molasses all the time, even when it isn't. This is the life I pretend you've invented for us. Maybe you'd include mountains where I'd put a meadow, a fool's dream. Sorrow and its gang have other plans, the kind that, despite bad weather and poor communication, never fall through. Love, the imagined world is a ruin of the real one. Love, remember how we saw a pair of red foxes across the creek? They dipped their dark noses into cold water. They bent to thirst and what thirst offers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Amie. I really appreciate your work, and you're taking us to outer space and around the world and back into our houses once again. So thank you so much for reading. Again, we really appreciate having you guys both here. It's just such a blessing. Now, one of my favorite parts of our Poets in Pajamas reading. We get to pick your brains about how you became so talented and amazing and successful. And so I will allow, if you want to ask a question first, James or Rachel, but I'm going to start it off. This question is for Kate. So I was going through the poetry that you sent me, and my personal favorite that really stood out to me was 3 Years in New England. Can you talk more about the specific story behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually, it's funny, that's the most recent poem from that list that I wrote.
Oh.
And it was published real fast. I've never had a poem published so quickly. But um, it was probably like 5 weeks from when I wrote it to when it was published. A zine had asked me to write something about relaxing, which is just sort of about relaxing. But I was cat sitting. And I was cat sitting a cat who screamed all night and knocked lamps off the table every night in the middle of the night. Amie is nodding. So perhaps you
Yeah.
know. Um, and I was dealing with I was trying to like figure out a housing situation that had gotten very complicated. A couple of things had fallen through, and I was a little lost, and I kind of just put it all together. I think like the process of writing that was really just like, I think generally it's putting it down and then coming back to it and asking, where's the, like, what are the images that I really stick out to me? Obviously the lamp's getting knocked off the table. And where can I put more music in? Where is the certainty and where's the uncertainty? And it just kind of came together. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. And then Rachel has a question for both of you guys in the chat. Rachel says, Kate and Amie, I love the poems you shared with us. A question for both of you. What is your favorite kind of poetry to write? And is it
Mm.
also your favorite kind of poetry to read? Feel free to answer.
Do you want to go first, Kate, or do you?
You can go first if you want,
Oh.
but I'm happy to go first if you'd rather.
Yeah, I can try to jump in. Such a good question, Rachel. Thank you for it. And there, I want to just say like all of it, right? Like I like to write all of it and I like to read all of it, which isn't 100% true. But I think I get most excited when I'm writing into a new project and pushing myself in some way. And so that does look a lot of different ways. There was one summer where I was working on a sonnet crown about STIs, and it was just like the most exciting thing to do for that summer. But have I written a sonnet crown since then? Like, no, it was like that season. I love when those kind of projects just like take over your mind.
Yeah.
It feels really good. And what I like to read is kind of similar in that I love when I come across a book of poetry that I can't put down. Like I tend to like to read poetry fairly slowly, but every once in a while there's a book where I'm just like, no, I'm reading this cover to cover in one sitting. And that usually means there's a lot of beauty in terms of imagery in there. Often there's a narrative thread, but not always. But there's an authentic voice moving those poems forward that has like grabbed me. And I love when that happens.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. And I agree with a lot of that. I do think there's like the thing that I'm writing at the moment is always the thing I'm most interested in writing. And it changes all the time. And I think kind of because of that, it always feels like the thing I'm reading, if it's something I'm reading and enjoying, the thing I'm reading is the most interesting thing to be reading. Because I like reading something that's new and surprising. So like Ararat, which I'm reading, is really surprising me. And I think that the narrative thread, like Amie mentioned, is something that's helping me there. But it's just the way she's balancing these like concrete images of this family and also um, the underlying stories and the beauty that she makes out of it is just is really captivating. So I love that's my favorite right now.
Okay. So Kate, please put that in the chat. It sounds incredible. It sounds absolutely incredible. Evelyn, I will bombard them with questions if you don't jump in.
Yeah, sure. Let me think. I'll ask a question of Amie in particular. Um, I'm curious how you approach surprise in your poems. I feel like a lot of the poems that you read had these like really surprising turns, from like line to line. And that's something I really love. So I'm curious, like, when do those surprises come to you, the poet, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a tough question. I think it's a mix of things. I'd say probably the two most common places surprise come in for me is sometimes in that like first like invigorating draft where you're just like, ooh, oh, okay, okay. And some of those surprises stick around through revision and some of them, get dropped. But I think that's what keeps me writing is that you can create that surprise for yourself.
Mm,
But then I think it also comes through revision because then you can like really look at line breaks and go, oh, how can I make a surprise out of something that maybe in an earlier version didn't land as surprisingly.
mm.
So spending time and thinking about the structure and how that aids surprise. And then rarely, but I love when it happens, I think a typo can lead to surprise
Yeah.
where you like think you wrote one word and then you're like, oh, that's not the word I meant, but ooh, what happened there? And I love when those mistakes like open something up in the poem.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually just writing today and I was finding myself like going through it because you know how you write something and then you read it and then you write it again and finish it. I was doing like the second read of it and I was like, I did not mean to put that word there, but I kind of love it. Like it kind of makes sense. And so sometimes you trust your brain on the first try to be like, yeah, they knew what they were doing. Kate, I have another question for you. So a little controversial. I know people
Okay.
have different feelings about swearing in poetry. I have a few
Oh,
swear words.
yeah.
I'm not gonna say them. Um, but is there a specific reason? Like, how do you find a
Mm.
place to put them in? Why you decide to use them? Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a good question. I think I am aware that not everyone wants to hear it. I'm sorry. Um, but I think probably the easy out answer would be that I'm from New Jersey, so it's just kind of like part of my vocabulary. You get it. Um, I will say another thing that comes to mind though is there's this quote by Charles Simic. Oh gosh, and he says that he likes poems that um, I'm going to swear, I'm sorry. He likes poems that remember that we eat shit and fuck as well as kneel down to pray. And I do think of that a lot. I think like I'm very inspired by nature and by beauty and wonder. And I think everyone wants to hear about those things. If I write about a bird or the moon, it's not controversial.
Mhm.
Um, but I am really interested in like the mess of life and in uncertainty, and I want to include that. And I feel like honestly, I'm not trying to put I'm not trying to put swear words in. They just happen usually on the first draft, because I'm just trying to access the emotional as close as I can. And I will try to write them out, if there's a better word. But sometimes I feel like it's the most authentic word and then it stays there. So
I think that is a great answer. Sometimes we say the swear word and we mean it. That's enough.
exactly.
That's enough. Um, my next question is for Amy. I wanted to hear more about your process with dreams, and how you incorporate them into your work. It's very difficult, me personally, for me to remember dreams, to call them back, but I love how you just brought it forward in such a very honest and straightforward, very candid way. So if you want to talk about it a little bit more, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. I love talking about dreams. One, I mean, I think it is helpful that I do remember them very vividly, and I've done so since I was a little kid. Like my dad still jokes, like that I would just come downstairs and pour my cereal and just tell him my dreams as he was making our lunches for the day. So I have a long history of just recalling them. And then it was a few years ago where I had like all these like dream notes, and I was like, I'm just gonna like write a poem called Dream Sequence and have like each dream be like a section of it. And that kind of finally like opened up a way into it where I could just keep writing them, because I was like, oh, I'm just gonna like use very like straightforward language, as you said, simple language where it's like, this is what the dream was, and not try to interpret it or make it mean something else. And I think earlier on in my writing, I kept just taking pieces of the dreams and like planting them into poems, which is still useful and I like to do. But there was something very like, I think it helped me actually understand the dreams better by just writing them as like reports almost, rather than trying to like interpret them in the work.
Okay, yeah. I mean, well, that's a very cute story about you like reading it to your dad and like after cereal. But I really appreciate how much effort you put into crafting it into poetry and making it blend seamlessly into your work. I think it's something to really admire. I will give a last call for questions tonight. Evelyn, can you check our Facebook Live, please, to see if there's any questions before we hop off and get to sleep? I know it's late where I'm at. It's not that late, actually, it's 8, but I'll sleep.
Yeah,
Evelyn.
you live with cats, so you got to go to bed early.
I have 2 cats, and they don't like each other very much. So it's been a bit rough in this household.
Yeah.
No questions, but lots of praise from the comment section.